Welcome to the All for Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, story changers, and welcome back to another episode of the Isolation Inspiration Interview series. Our guest today is Karen Sargent. Karen is a business psychologist and high performance coach who helps women in business sort through the overwhelm and self-doubt so that they can build a thriving business or career without burning out. Throughout her career, she has worked with leaders in global organizations such as Unilever, Lloyds Bank, Aviva, BBC, Uber, Coca-Cola, and Royce, and has taught high-performance techniques to hundreds of entrepreneurs. In 2010, she, along with her now husband, decided to spend their savings for a home deposit on seeing the world instead, and travelled from London to Asia without using planes. This led to the start of their travel blog, globalhelpswap.com. In this interview, you will learn kindness is what connects humans. Tracking progress keeps you motivated. Why you have to get out of your bubble. And that during coronavirus, it's important to give yourself what you need in the moment. You're going to learn this and so much more in this interview with Karen Sargent.
So my story starts in Malta. I'm originally Maltese. And when I was in my early 20s, my big dream was to move to London and do my master's in psychology. But I would give anyone who asked me why I wasn't doing it, 101 reasons why I couldn't do that, until one time someone challenged me. And I realized that I was just making excuses rather than finding valid reasons for not being able to come to London. So 19 years ago, 2 days after 9/11 actually, so 18 years ago, I moved to London to the panic and anxiety of my mom at the time. I did my master's in psychology and really fell in love with London. So I've been living in London ever since. I moved back to Malta just for a year. And I kind of checked off a lot of my dreams when I got my first job. I used to work for the BBC as my first job. And then I moved on to a consultancy where I was traveling the world and giving workshops in all these amazing exotic places like Brazil and Malaysia. And so on paper, I was doing really well. I was successful, but I don't know what it was. Something in my heart and my soul felt missing. And I remember as I kind of approached my 30th birthday, I started really thinking about what is it that I want from life? Why am I here? What's the most important thing? And I remember when I was 30 years old, I decided to go on my first solo adventure to Vietnam for 30 days as a symbolic thing. And I remember at that time I was even going through counseling because I was just not in a very good place. I was really unhappy and I just didn't know why. Anyway, so I'm in Vietnam, and about day 16, maybe 2.5 weeks, and I remember I'm in Hoi An, which is this really beautiful, such a pretty village, and I'm on this bicycle cycling to the beach. And I'm so happy, I'm singing. I'm literally singing out loud. You don't want to hear me sing. It's not a good sound. But I was just full of joy. And at that moment, it was almost like I had an out-of-body experience. And this voice was saying, this is what you want to feel in your life. This is what you want in life. And it was freedom. And that was a real defining moment in my life, because ever since then, all my decisions have always been about, does this give me more freedom or less freedom? And I've been able to make really big decisions. You know, my husband and I have decided, for example, not to have children because freedom is the big thing that we're focusing on. And that's a massive decision. And I think I spent about a year reflecting on that and really thinking about it. And so ever since then, I've just really been focused on creating freedom in my life. That led to me leaving my job a year and a half later, going traveling for 18 months. And that's where we experienced true freedom. And then when we came back, we decided that we would never be employed again, because that was the ultimate freedom, to be self-employed. And so that's that's what led me on this new journey now. I run a travel blog with my husband, so we still travel quite a lot. It's both of our passion. We love it. But also I freelance. I'm a psychologist, so I freelance as a psychologist. And I also now help entrepreneurs, again, who probably are like me, who have left the corporate world wanting freedom, but also have realized that running your own business sometimes doesn't give you freedom, especially in the beginning. You know, it's really hard. You work all hours. You're constantly thinking. You feel guilty, even if you stop for 20 minutes to have a break. And so now that is what my passion is to actually help people who are in that stage where they've started a business to find freedom, but actually they have anything but. So that's me in a nutshell.
Why do you think you were attracted to psychology?
Oh my goodness. So I wish I could give you a really deep answer to this. The reality is that I think I've always wanted to be a little different from everyone. I think that there's been a real driving force in all of my life. You know, I used to wear really crazy clothes as a kid. I used to have blue hair. So I've always wanted to be different. And I remember that I was doing my A-levels in accounts and economics at sixth form, with the intention of doing a BCom degree, a commerce degree. And then I realized that 90% of my friends were also doing a BCom degree. And I was thinking, oh my God, everyone does this degree. I don't think it's going to have much value when I do it. And so I started looking for something else. And someone told me that if you did psychology, there was the opportunity to go abroad to do a master's in business psychology. So I was still going into the business side. I really love the idea of what makes people engaged and productive and motivated to work. So I kind of found a different angle whilst doing something different that not everyone else was doing. Turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I think it sets me up for not just work, but for life in general. I know you've done a psychology degree as well, so
I have,
is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Funny enough,
amazing.
I'm actually I'm going back to do a master's in September, so I'm returning.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm returning to academia.
that's
I kind of
exciting.
I got the academic bug again, and I'm
Oh,
wanting to sort of just kind of take things a little bit deeper. And with the work that I've been doing it's been 5 years since I graduated now. I now have some ideas of areas where I want to go and kind of research and get that academic perspective.
oh my goodness.
So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I'm returning.
And that's a really good time as well, because I do think that when you have experience between your first degree and your master's degree, you kind of bring so much more value into your research and into your thinking. So that's great.
Yeah, so I think we can nerd out on psychology for a while, and I'm sure we will as we go through this interview. The second thing that I wanted to pick up on and highlight, and it's just a trend that I've started noticing over the podcast, is you're not the first person who has traveled to Asia and had some kind of revelation about their life. And it is a cliche, isn't it, this whole backpacking around Southeast Asia thing. Why do you think we're attracted to Asia?
Well, so actually my love of travel started when I went to Thailand. So I've traveled quite a bit up until that point. So this was when I was, I think, about 23 years old. And I just ended a long-term relationship, and I went with my friend to Thailand. And oh my goodness, I was blown away by the fact that this place was just so different. So just like nothing I had experienced in my life. And I think the fact that you are in a place like that, where actually I always say that if you're going anywhere in Asia, especially places like Thailand, although now it's kind of become much easier, you need to know that things will never work out as you plan them, but they will work out. So you need to put that off switch. I'm a control freak. I like being in control. So you need to take that control switch it off, and just trust that things will work out. And I think that's a very powerful way of being in the world, because it makes you present, and it makes you just notice more, pay more attention. So I think the state that you enter when you go to Asia is such a, I don't know, such an alive state, such an awake state, that you can't help but want to experience more and more and more of it. In fact, I was just in Thailand again. I think this was my 6th trip to Thailand. I came back literally before a week before lockdown.
Ooh, lucky.
Yeah, perfect timing where flights were not being cancelled, thank God.
Man. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing luck. I know some people who got stuck a week the opposite way,
Yeah.
and it's taken them forever to get back.
Although I do know a couple who got stuck in the Maldives in this lovely luxury hotel by Cinnamon, and Cinnamon are just letting them stay there for a minimal amount. So I'm thinking, oh, actually.
Yeah, silver linings and all that.
Yeah.
So let's focus on this time in Asia, and in particular this experience that you had, and this word freedom comes to you. I think lots of people have a driving value and sort of a driving barometer of who they want to be and the way they want to live their life. Why do you think freedom is the most important one for you?
So I think this is really interesting, because for me, it's important because it is. You know, there's no reason why, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just, I need freedom in my life. But what's really interesting for me is to notice how it's showed up throughout my life, the need for freedom. So growing up in Malta, I went to nun school, and the nuns that taught me, at least, were extremely, extremely strict. And I struggled with it. I remember I cried every day for the first 2 years of my life, begging my mom not to send me to school. It felt so constricting and so unnatural. So I can see freedom showing up there. I can see freedom showing up in the fact that the idea of going to an office every single day, waking up at the same time, having that routine, was killing me, literally killing me. And it's interesting because a lot of my time of employment really didn't have routine, especially when I was traveling all over. There wasn't much routine there. But even then, I don't know, this idea of not doing what I wanted was really, really hard. So it's the need for freedom is just something that's just part of my DNA, part of my being. I don't know why it's there, it just is.
So talk us through this process of you were working the regular job, you go to Asia, have this revelation, and then how do you go through this process of transitioning from your old life into your new life?
Yeah, so it took a while actually. So I remember when I came back from Vietnam, I was really just almost in shock, right? Because I knew that I wanted freedom, but at this point I had a student loan, I had a job, I just didn't know how to make it happen, right? I had no idea, no clue. But it actually took about, because it was the time when I met the guy who was now my husband. So over a year and a half, me and my now husband had a lot of conversations about, I want to be free, I want to go see the world, I want to travel. And at the same time, both of us were saving money to buy a place. And a year into our relationship, kind of, we knew that this was going to be the one, right? And at that point, we said, right, we've got all this money saved up for a deposit. Do we pull it together, buy our own place, or do we go see the world? And literally, it was just us going, you know what? Screw this. We're off to see the world. So it was just a decision that, came about because we had been saving for something else. And then suddenly this reality hit us and we went, if we don't do it now, then when? So we did. That's it. We jumped, I guess, since then. And it's interesting because, so one of my big fears, and I still remember, we were on a train. So my husband and I traveled from London to Asia without using planes. So we took a lot of trains. Yeah. A lot of trains, a lot of buses. And I remember being on a train with him and telling him, and I think this was a bit into our trip. I have a feeling we were in Thailand or China maybe. And I remember telling him, but I'm just really scared of being poor. I want freedom. I want to have my own business. But what if it doesn't work out, I'm scared of being poor. And in our 18 months, first of all, we were poor. We, the plan was to travel for a year. And after 6 months, we decided, a year is not enough. So we're going to half our budget and spend another 6 months traveling. So we stretched our budget to 18 months, which meant we were living on something like, I don't think it was even £40 a day. I think it was £35 a day on average. And then we had our luxury budget for when things got too much and we needed, a nicer hotel. But most of the time, we were living on £35 a day for both of us. So that's poverty, right? We also met a lot of poor people on the way. And that's when I realized that, hold on a second, poverty doesn't mean misery, doesn't even mean a lack of freedom. So when we came back, the fear of my business not working out and me being poor was no longer the thing that held me back, that stopped me. I didn't care at that point. I knew I could live on very little. And freedom now was much more important than security and having lots of money. Didn't matter at all. And so that really changed for me. And it kind of really helped me again be even freer in the world. Funnily enough, I ended up making much more money than I ever did when I was employed, because that's how life works, right? But it wasn't, it wasn't a reason for me.
Yeah. What was the train route? How did you kind of do the middle? Because Europe's very easy and Asia's fairly easy, but there's a big bit in the middle that's not so easy. What was your route and what were the different countries that you went through?
Yeah, so we went from London to Paris, to Germany, to Russia, and then crossed Russia. We stopped in some incredible places in Russia where not many tourists go. And then Mongolia. So we did the Trans-Mongolian Railway. Again, we spent a whole month in Mongolia, going up the steppes and just incredible places. And then from Mongolia, we got into China. And then from China, there was one day where we got this bus. We were going to take the river first, but the river was dry, so we had to take a bus. And on one day, we had breakfast in China, lunch in Laos, and dinner in Thailand. So we crossed on this bus that had live chickens in it, a refrigerator in the middle of the aisle, bags of onions under our feet. I mean, this was not your tourist bus. Oh, that was amazing. So that was the route. And then once you're in Asia, it was quite easy to go from Thailand to, I can't remember where we went next, Laos. Yeah, again, we went back to Laos and then Cambodia. And then the first flight we took was to the Philippines because we couldn't find a route from...
There's not really a train through the sea, is there?
No, we did find find a cargo ship, but it wasn't the safest thing. And then apparently people asked for a lot of bribes. And so we didn't have the money to get ourselves out of a sticky situation if it happened. So we're
Right.
like, "Do you know what? We've made it to Asia. It's good enough."
You've experienced a lot of different cultures and different ways of seeing the world. From your experience of having to integrate in this way, do you have any insight on how we can connect better with each other as humans?
Oh my God, what a good question. So here's the thing. I come from Malta, which it has 400,000 people in it. It's very small. And it's got an island mentality, right? So I actually, when I left Malta, I was pretty closed-minded. I was pretty scared of different cultures. And in a way, that sometimes is what helps me have some empathy towards people who maybe aren't as open. So because in my experience, I had only experienced other white Maltese people. It was a very, very small world that I lived in. And as I discovered more cultures, I became more curious. So I used to learn about, so for example, Russia. Let's talk about Russia. So I had a flatmate who's from Latvia, and when he learned about the fact that we were going to Russia, he was like, "Be careful, there's a lot of bad people there. Don't trust anyone." And then we were on this train from Germany to Russia, and we had assumed that there would be a food cart. It was I think it was a 36-hour journey, so quite a long time. So we thought, okay, there's going to be food. So I remember getting on the train and asking the guy, "Where's the food?" And he's like, "Niet." And "niet" is no for in Russian. And we're like, "Oh my God, there's no food on this train." So, and the next stop was going to be overnight. This was at about 4:00 in the afternoon. And then the next stop was going to be the next morning, 9:00 in the morning. And we were like, wow, we just have a bottle of wine and a packet of crackers. So let's just drink the wine quickly and get sloshed and fall asleep and forget that we're starving. Anyways, as we're kind of discussing this plan to get drunk, there's a knock on our door, on our cabin door. And this Russian guy comes along and he's like, "I heard you have no food. Here, have some of mine." And I'll never forget, he gave us 2 boiled eggs, a roll of bread, and a packet of biscuits. I still get the chills from it. And we're like, "Oh my God, thank you. Can we pay you?" He's like, no payment. So he just had a glass of wine with us, and that was it. And this was one of so many moments of kindness that we experienced in Russia. Now, if you ever speak to a Russian person, it's a very direct, you cannot read their faces. Like it's a very kind of, I give nothing away, and I'm extremely direct. And I guess that sometimes gets really misunderstood by people as being either rude or uncaring and cold. But the fact that we were in need many times in Russia, whether we got lost or we were hungry or our hotel was overbooked, so many incidents, every time we were met with kindness. And I think that was the first time I had walked into entered the country feeling a little bit reserved and scared, and realizing that I had 101 misconceptions. And that started showing me that, first of all, my perception and the way I see, the way I make meaning, such as, if someone comes and they're Maltese or English and they say, "You sit," I take that as being rude. But actually in Russia, that's not rude. It's just the way people communicate. And that's where I started learning that my interpretation of other people's actions was just that, was an interpretation. It wasn't fact. So that's, I think, the first thing that is really helpful for us to connect, is to remind ourselves that the way we're viewing other people and their actions comes from our bubble, our world, and it might necessarily be very different to their world. And I think as humans, immediately we go into interpreting it in a very negative way. and making it mean bad things. So when I feel that happening, I pause. I say, hold on a second, it might mean something completely different for them. So I think that's one way in which, we can connect a little bit more with people who are different to us. The other thing is just spend time with people who are not like you. Get out of your bubble, I think it's so easy to just, and it's fear, right? That just puts us in a bubble with like-minded people. And I always, whenever I'm training and doing stuff, I always tell people, find unlike-minded people and be curious. Be curious about why do they see the world in this way, and what creates that thinking, and what's the culture there. So that curiosity, I think, versus judgment is what's important.
Mm-hmm. So you go on this big extended travel, Karen. You're like, fuck the job. I'm out of here.
The house. Uh-huh.
What then leads you to making the decision about your new vocation and starting the travel blog and working with your husband? Why was that the thing that came to the fore?
So we realized on our trip that we didn't want to be employed ever again. That was the ultimate freedom, is not to have to answer to anyone else. And so that was the starting point. So we came back and we said, whatever happens, we're not going to get a job. And of course, life decides to test me. And I'm online and I see this job, I'll never forget, for a senior psychologist with Emirates Airlines. And it looked amazing. I was like, oh my God, actually, this is really good. And for a moment, I filled in the application and saved it. And my heart sank. I have never felt so sad in my life, because it was my soul going, you promised me this, and at the first chance, you're completely denying it. And actually, that's when I realized, no, I have to try this. I have to be self-employed. So I deleted that application, never sent it. And that was the right decision to do. And then, as I said, I want to be in control. So we had plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And plan A was for Paul to start. It wasn't even a travel blog at the time. At the time, it was a website promoting free volunteering opportunities. Because over our travels, we had wanted to volunteer, but actually all we could find online were these volunteering opportunities where you have to pay thousands of pounds, which we clearly didn't have. So that's the first thing. Kind of, there was this mission of, it's not fair that these big companies with big budgets have turned volunteering into a business, and the real places around the world that need volunteers aren't getting a look in, right? They're so hard to find. So we're like, right, we're going to fix that. So we created a website where we promoted free volunteering. And that's how our blog started. So that's why the blog, that side started. For me, I'd always been training, and I'd always run workshops for leaders, doing on change and peak performance and all of that. And so I just reached out to my network. I used to be a coach's manager at a really amazing training company called The Mind Gym. Reached out to them, and I started freelancing for them. And actually, that was quite easy. I mean, plan B was to sell smoothies in a market. Plan C was to work in a bar in the evening. So we had loads of plans, but luckily the first one worked out. Kind of, it just, I don't know. We've been doing it now for 8 years.
You talked about the senior psychologist post, and I promised and alluded to that we would return to psychology at some point, because I can't resist the opportunity to speak about it. You mentioned that you are particularly interested in the psychology of things like productivity and sort of team management and things. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of your favorite findings or useful tips and strategies that you picked up in your studies and in your work?
Yeah, so I kind of, I work with a lot of leaders, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about leadership. and what it means, to motivate and engage a team to get their best. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that organizations and leaders and managers make is sometimes is to forget that we are human. And as human beings, we are driven by emotion. We are not driven by that project plan that tells you you're going to do A, B, and C. We are driven by feeling, oh, yes, I can do it. Yes, that sounds interesting. Yes, I want to do it. And so that for me has been the biggest thing, is to show leaders that when you're trying to get people to be productive, to be engaged, you don't focus on the rational brain. You focus on the emotional brain, the emotional side of things. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. And then thinking about, so what is it that puts us in a state that actually makes us feel motivated and productive and all of that. So, for example, I really love Amabile's work, where she talks a lot about, she did a piece of research where she asked people, what was happening when you were having a great day at work? And then she analyzed thousands and thousands of journal entries, and she discovered that the biggest thing that was present most of the time, like over 70% of the time, was a sense of progress. And yet, when managers are asked, what is it that you can do to motivate your team? And they ask them to rank what they could do. So, sense of progress came at number 8. So it shows that actually people don't even think of using it as a motivational factor. So even when I work with entrepreneurs now, one of the key things I help them do is set up a system so that they can see the progress, that they actually connected with it, because that's one of the most important things. The second thing for me is purpose, knowing why, having a reason beyond making money. And even if it's, you want to make money, but there's a reason beyond it. So do you want to make money to support your family, for example? Do you want to have money to, I don't know, go on amazing vacation, whatever it is, there's a big why. And actually, this is, again, a big part of my work, is helping people connect with that why. Because unless there is a reason bigger than yourself, then I think it's very hard to stay motivated, especially when you're faced with challenges and things not working out, things not going your own way, which happens a lot, right? In business, we never know what to expect. So I think those are my kind of almost my operating principles, is find a way to get in an emotional state that makes you want to work, that makes you excited and inspired by what you do. I think that's what makes people effective.
Yeah. We have skirted round the large issue of today, and I think, speaking of energy and psychology, I think this is a time where we can transition into talking about COVID-19 and the new situation that we have to motivate and manage ourselves through. First of all, can you just tell the audience how coronavirus has been affecting you? What's been going on in your life since this all kicked off?
Okay, so like anything in life, there's really good stuff coming out of this for me, and quite scary stuff as well. So all my freelance work has been cancelled.
Yeah.
So that's scary. Our travel blog income has just gone down to 0. So right now, both my husband and I aren't earning any money. It's interesting because I still do virtual training, but even that has been cancelled. I think as companies go into shock, they're kind of thinking, you know what, let's cut our costs. So that's really hard. That's really scary, not knowing how I'm going to pay my mortgage in a few months' time. It needs a bit of, let's say, mindset management for me. So that's the kind of the bad parts. But there's also been so many good things, like not having to travel so much, spending time at home. I live right next to a forest, and my husband and I have been taking long walks in the forest every single day. That's been amazing. Discovering things like baking sourdough. I managed to make my own starter and make my own loaf of bread last week, which was fab. So there's also this time where, that you can just explore. So that's been nice. I've really enjoyed that. And I've also had to spend time thinking about how do I show up, for my community? How do I show up for my clients, my network, in a way that gives value, that supports them? So that's also been actually quite good for me, because it makes me focus on who do I want to be right now in this time. Do I want to let my fear and anxiety take over and take away my leadership or the value that I can bring to others? Or do I want to show up in a way that sends a positive energy, that gives people ideas of what to do and how to manage it? Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, I'll be honest. There are afternoons where all I want to do is just scroll on my sofa, watch Netflix or play Catan. I love playing Catan on my phone. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, I haven't,
Don't
no.
get it, because it's addictive. But and actually reminding myself to be kind, right? If I need to just spend an hour zoning out, playing on my phone or watching Netflix, that is absolutely okay.
Mm-hmm. I found it really interesting when you were saying, oh, we don't have to travel. And I thought that would be something that you'd be really missing after everything we've been talking about.
Well, the thing is, so I take winter off, so I never work in January, February, and a bit of March. So literally, we had just come back from a long trip, first in France and then in Thailand. So we're actually happy that we don't have to do any campaigns. I mean, it sounds really bad, but right now, I'm sure my answer will change in a month's time, and I'll be like, oh my god, I need to go somewhere. But for now, it's fine.
Do you have any insights that you think can help people during this time?
Funny, I just sent my list a few tips on Monday, so I can share those. So I think the first thing is that it's so important to process your feelings. I am going through so many emotions in a day. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And I think it's really important to take a step back and process them. And whether that's talking to someone about how you're feeling, or I love writing things down, I think that's really, really useful. And what I find is that when I write things down and I put my thinking on paper, sometimes I realize that I'm either dramatizing or just doing all or nothing thinking. So it helps me understand where my irrational thoughts are creating unnecessary fear. So it's a really useful way to be able to distinguish between fact or fiction, right? Depending on how you're doing. So that's the first thing. Just really take time to process your feelings. Secondly, be kind to yourself. Whatever you want to do, you feel like doing in the moment is absolutely okay. We are going through something that we've never experienced, right? As a collective consciousness. So the fact that you don't feel like doing any work, or the fact that you don't feel productive, is okay. Now, of course, you don't want to just that be the thing that you feel for a whole week. So you do need to give yourself like a time frame. So for me, I give myself, for the next 2 hours, I'm just gonna feel sorry for myself. And I've got, permission to do that. And then the thing that helps me come out of it are two things. One is focus on what you can control. So if you're the type of person who right now is checking every news article, focusing on the fact that this virus is affecting so many people, don't do that. It's a waste of energy. Focus on what can you control instead. And I think there's a really powerful strategy, which is thinking about how can you be of service right now? Who can you help? Who can you support? And even if it is just thinking about your friends who maybe are living alone right now, giving them a call, having a chat, especially now that all the excitement of using WhatsApp chats and Zoom and all of that is probably dying down a bit. Don't forget the ones that might need, a call from you. So focus on how you can help. I think just takes the spotlight from your pain and your worry, and turns it into something a bit more positive. And the last one is be grateful. There are things right now that you have that are helping you. You know, there are people, I read a story about people in India who have literally to walk thousands of miles to get to their village because there's no trains, they have no money. So whatever situation we are in right now, the fact that we live in Europe, if most of your listeners and watchers are from Europe or the US, in the developed world, makes us so much better off than a lot of people out there who are truly suffering. So let's be grateful to what we have, right? Let's be grateful to what's helping us right now and connect with that sense of gratitude, because it stops the brain from feeling all the doom and gloom.
Mm-hmm. What are you grateful for, Karen?
So I'm very grateful for my forest around the corner. That is the best thing right now. I'm grateful that my husband is really supportive, that actually, he'll come and make me a cup of tea every now and then. I'm grateful that he sits and listens when I want to have a rant about how worried I am about the lack of work. My husband is honestly a Zen master. I wish I could bottle his calmness and sell it, because honestly it's just so precious. So he's a really calming influence on me. I'm grateful for the fact that we have a cat, and I don't know why, but just cuddling her is just distracts us from the whole being in and watching her antics. She's so happy that we're here all the time now, so she keeps following us. Although there's a moment where she'd go and hide in a wardrobe because she needs a break from us. It seems. So that's quite funny. So I'm grateful for a lot of things. I'm grateful for the house I live in. We just moved in November, so from a one-bedroom flat to a house, so we've got all this amazing space. Yeah, so many things.
Do you think there are any opportunities available in the current situation?
I think changes like this and crises like this, I think, will always lead to something better. It's really hard. You don't see it in the moment. You don't see it in the crisis, right? When things are hard. But these are actually the moments that transform us. These are the moments that make us grow. So yes, I think there are a lot of opportunities. If your audience are entrepreneurs, right now I think there's such an opportunity to build that knowing, like, and trust factor by serving your community. So by offering free value. I know I've run free workshops. I'm doing stuff that I think helps and adds value right now. And who knows, where that will lead to. But I think, yes, absolutely, there's a lot of opportunity right now.
Mm-hmm. On that positive note, I would like to start bringing everything that we've talked about today full circle. And for our discussion this day, I've been the one who's been asking the questions mainly. I want to give the last question of today to you. Is there a question that you would like to ask our audience today, or a question you think the audience should be asking themselves?
Ooh. So yes, and I think the question, it kind of brings back some of the things I've been talking about, which is the biggest question I think you can ask yourself right now is, how can you be of service to those around you, to your clients, if you don't have clients, to your network, to your family, to your friends? Because when we are in service, it just brings the best of us, and it takes away all the rubbish that our mind keeps telling us and the fear, and it puts us in a much more powerful position. So that is the question I want your audience to ask themselves. How can you be of service right now?
For the audience today who we've just been addressing, Karen, who have resonated with your story, with your ideas, with the work that you do, and they want to find out a little bit more about who you are and what you do, where would you be directing them to go?
So they can check out my website, karensargent.co.uk, and that's SARGENT. I also run a free group for women called the Sisterhood Project, so they can come and find me there. And my business page on Facebook is Karen Sargent. And if they want to check out our blog, it's called globalhelpswap.com.
Amazing. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really loved your adventurous nature. I don't think we could really highlight anything else after what we've been talking about today. I've enjoyed your spirit of adventure, of inquiry, of pioneering and trying new things in your life and finding new places to learn from and to grow. So I'd just like to mark that and acknowledge that here today.
Oh, thank you, David, and thank you for having me on. It's been a lovely conversation. Appreciate it.
To continue to help you through this isolation period, I've decided to open up my Author Your Life Academy for free for the next 3 months. Author Your Life is my online educational community where you can access training sessions, workshops, and question and answers, and connect with other people around the world who are going through this situation and trying to make the best of things. The Academy normally costs $27 a month to subscribe, but for the next 3 months, I'm going to open that up for free. Essentially, you're getting a 3-month free trial of the platform. To access the Author Your Life Academy, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when prompted, enter the code CORONA in block capitals. Yes, what else would the code be? CORONA in block capitals, and that will take your $27 subscription down to zero for the next 3 months. The Academy is where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my content during this difficult time. It's where I'm trying to bring people together to help and support each other as we go through this period of isolation, of fear, of uncertainty. I hope the Academy is something that will be able to help you too during this situation. So if you want to come in and join us, as I said, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when you sign up, enter the code CORONA, and that will give you 3 months for free. It's my gift to you to try and help and support during this time as best I can. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be. Because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.